I'm part of the Harambee team, and I was responsible for the UK government funded program in installation, repair and maintenance, known as IRM in South Africa. I'm going to take you through very quickly a little bit about the program, and then we'll talk about the implications and insights in terms of funding and policy changes. Our IRM program was delivered with 3 partners, the National Business Initiative, Blue Lever Education, and IOPSA, which is the Institute of Plumbers of South Africa, an industry body. IOPSA actually ran 2 of the direct programs, the Artisan Recognition of Prior Learning program and the Solar and Heat Pump qualification, which is an industry qualification. NBI ran the skills program and some ARPL, and Blue Lever ran the apprenticeship program, are running the apprenticeship program, and something called Artisan Academy. We do have a separate podcast where you can go and find more information about those programs and insights from those programs. As I said earlier, the purpose of this podcast is to give you more information about the funding and policy implications. So we've split that into the 3 main areas of the project. So the first, if we look at the Artisan Recognition of Prior Learning program, sorry, there's an error in there, which I think we said in one of our insights to look at, to test your assumptions up front. And one of the assumptions we made was that everyone in this program would be employed already. And actually that isn't true. So we had to then, in separate instances, look at things like providing transport stipends, because if you're unemployed in South Africa, the cost of transport is really high. So people drop out of training programs because they can't get to the training. So that was a big deal. So making sure that we offered transport stipends to make sure that young people or people on the program could get to the place that they were doing the training and get to the place where they were doing the trade tests. We had to provide data for some of the online learning mechanisms. We had to provide for multiple trade test attempts. We had only budgeted initially for 1 trade test attempt, but in some instances, candidates didn't pass first time. So we had anticipated that they would fund themselves for the 2nd or 3rd attempts, but actually we had to step in and fund some of those because candidates just were unemployed or just didn't have the money to fund those. We landed up in the ARPL program with 100% pass rate ultimately, but I think there were some key lessons and insights learned in getting to that. And those obviously have implications for funders because the success rate depended on doing functional competencies and technical competencies up front, and then doing tailored training programs so that each person got the right skills so that they were able to pass their trade test at the end. We also incorporated GESI, Gender Equity and Social Inclusion modules, into the technical skills training in the ARPL program. And that was really interesting for us because we had to do something quite different to the GESI implementation that we had done in the apprenticeship and the skilling programs. Because we had people who were already in the world of work, we found the insights that came out of those programs were quite different. But again, incorporating GESI into all of these programs is really, really important. So funding and supporting that and incorporating GESI targets into these programs is also important. We had a 10% female inclusion target in this project, and that was really important in terms of driving absorption of females and management of females. And really, that is so important. That target is so important, and meeting that target is so important because that then creates role models of entrepreneurs and people in the industry that other young women coming into the skills and apprenticeship program can look up to. And that's really, really critical in this space. We had Blue Lever and NBI delivering the apprenticeship program and the skills programs. And a big insight into this is funding for Ready to Work and Gender Equity and Social Inclusion modules into the programs. Everybody that comes into the technical elements should have had some of the Ready to Work, so that when they get to a workplace, both of these programs have workplace exposure. And when they get to the workplace, they need to understand what being at work means. Things like being on time, things like how to act in the workplace. If you're sick, to let your bosses know. If you're going to be late, to manage that. And there's been a lot of stuff that has come out of insights that have come out of both iterations of the program around how the content that young people need to know to make them better ready for work and to show up better when they get to work. And then Jessie, training of young males and females in the program. So females, obviously that's important, but also the males in the program to make sure that they know how to treat women in the workplace. And a lot of conversations have come up in both the ARPL and the skills programs around what constitutes sexual harassment, as an example. Some cultural elements around sexual harassment have come up for as well. We also implemented a maternity leave policy for apprentices, which is a first in South Africa. From an industry point of view, maternity leave in South Africa is guaranteed in terms of basic condition of employment, but generally what happens is young people fall out of programs because there isn't the policy that enables them to catch up, to come back into the program and to catch up. Obviously, if people are coming back into programs, into different cohorts, or into their same cohort, the catch-up costs money. The fact that they may extend their training post the funding period, that costs money. And those were big insights for policy. There was also insights for the employers, because employers have to make sure, in terms of the Occupational Health and Safety Act in South Africa, that the workplace is safe for young women. And there are a lot of potential things that are not safe for pregnant people in a workplace. So IOPSA, the industry body, also implemented occupational health and safety impact assessments for maternity instances in their workplaces. And that was not only for the apprenticeship program. Again, that takes support from the industry body and funding to make that stuff happen. IOPSA support that program for all of their members, but what if you're not an industry body member? How do you manage that? Because the implications of not doing it right in South Africa, the consequences are quite severe and quite strong. We started implementing this program during COVID, so access to devices and data was a big issue, especially during lockdown periods. But both our programs have retained online elements. So access to adequate devices is very, very key. Access to data is important. And in South Africa, not only access to data, but connectivity. So even though I might have data, I might not have the connectivity. And that has a lot of policy and implications from a country point of view. How do we roll out Wi-Fi more effectively? How do we reduce the cost of data better? How do we fund adequate devices for young people on these programs and make sure that they don't get lost, don't get stolen, and are still in a workable condition at the end of a 3-year program, as an example? Another big thing that's come out, especially in the apprenticeship program, is the need for management of candidates and employers, and that needs to be 2 different sets of people during the apprenticeship program. And that's really key, so that if there is an issue with the employer, say an employer is not happy with a candidate, that the employer feels like someone is supporting them in the program, but at the same time the candidate feels they have someone to talk to and someone who's going to have their back in the program. And again, that takes extra funding and extra resources to make that happen. And that's something that hasn't really come up, especially in the apprenticeship programs in South Africa, that I've seen anyway. Another big thing is employer training. So it's really essential that both the owner of the company and the supervisors have training on how to work with the young people, and that we don't just throw young people into those environments. It's really important. And also that all the people working with apprentices in the workplace also go through employer training as well, through Jessie training as well. I think also that having employer buy-in again from the industry, industry buy-in and employer buy-in makes such a huge difference, especially with the advocacy and the need for advocacy. One of the things we're busy testing with Blue Leave at the moment is a student wraparound support program, which is helping test different scenarios and different kinds of support that could be rolled out across technical skills programs in South Africa as well. And that's also another additional cost, but really, really important as well. And then obviously the access to stipends and the access to support for those young people. And then lastly, in the Artisan Business Support Program, the Artisan Academy, again, we implemented a new Jessie module into that program, and we're still waiting for the lessons and insights out of that. But having sat in those classes with the Artisan Academy candidates, it's really essential that we make space for those conversations. We had comments coming up about women shouldn't be on site, as an example, and we need to be overcoming and working a lot harder to overcome those barriers. So again, that has implications for policymakers and for funders. And again, setting targets in all of these programs is also key from a policy point of view. But you can't just set the target. You have to have the advocacy. You have to have the support. And then I think the other big thing for me that came out of Artisan Academy is the need for post-program mentorship. People on the program go through this amazing life-changing journey, but they need support mechanisms for when they go back into their space. And I think that is also really key. So those are the lessons and insights for program design and funding. We hope you found that very useful. Thank you.